Hello and welcome to World Konnect, your window to the world. If last week saw the world shake with the Panama Papers bomb, this week added to its casualties. Spain's industry minister called it quits, joining the ranks of Ukraine's former president. If last week saw Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff say that the attempt to impeach her is a coup, this week compounded her troubles, and she could be in for some serious trouble after she failed to stop her impeachment process from taking off. And we know by now that there is never a dull moment in the US presidential race. If last week saw those trailing pulling off upsets, this week has made more heads turn. If you are already excited to know all that kept the world talking this week, we won't keep you waiting any longer. Let's get started right away with the focus of the show. Two powerful earthquakes a day apart batter southern Japan. Death toll and damages mount. Rescue crews race against time to save those trapped under the rubble. Thousands evacuated. Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff faces impeachment vote in the lower house of Brazilian Congress on Sunday after its Supreme Court rejects government's petition to suspend the impeachment process. Opinion polls predict victories for Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in Tuesday's New York primaries, even as Clinton and Sanders trade barbs at a Democratic debate before the big contest. And Trump claims his party wants him to lose. Southern Africa faces a severe drought and hunger crisis. Malawi declares a state of national disaster due to food shortages. Mozambique issues a red alert. South Africa declares the recent drought its worst in at least 100 years. And a floating school imparts free education to children living in Mokoko slum in Nigeria's Lagos. A beacon of hope for Mokoko's poverty-stricken community, the school can adapt to changing water levels and withstand storms and floods. A powerful earthquake of 7.3 magnitude struck southern Japan early on Saturday, killing at least 19 people. Just over a day after, a quake killed 9 people in the same region. Japanese Prime Minister has ordered mobilization of more troops to the quake-hit region. Hundreds more were injured due to the fresh quake, and thousands of people were trapped in collapsed buildings. Authorities warned of damage over a wide area with reports of fires, power outages, collapsed bridges and gaping holes in the earth. Saturday's quake triggered a tsunami advisory, although it was later lifted. No irregularities were reported at 3 nuclear power plants in the area. The world's attention was focused this week on West Asia, where Syria held a parliamentary election on Wednesday in government-held areas of the country. The government said the vote was held to comply with the constitution. Voters were electing 250 members of parliament. The polls are expected to boost President Assad's position, as the parliament has no real power in Syria's presidential system. The opponents have denounced the poll as illegitimate and a meaningless process. Meanwhile, UN-led peace talks have resumed in Geneva. Syria's main opposition group is willing to share membership of a transitional governing body with current members of the government of President Bashar al-Assad, but not with Assad himself. The government is, however, firm on Assad holding on to the top post. The Syrian president has pitched in for a national unity government as against a transitional one. The United Nations has, however, raised concern over the poor progress in the delivery of humanitarian aid amidst fresh ceasefire violations this week. Let's start America Chronicles with a country deep in political turmoil. Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff's woes are showing no signs of receding. Brazil's Supreme Court has given its nod for impeachment proceedings against her to proceed. She now faces an impeachment vote in the lower house of Brazil's Congress on Sunday. If she fails that test, things could go further downhill for the embattled president. As she firefights the threat of impeachment, what's ironical is that she is being targeted in Brazil by lawmakers who are facing scandals of their own.
In a major setback to Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff, its Supreme Court on Friday rejected a last-ditch attempt by her to avert an impeachment vote in Congress. This has further reduced her chances of survival, even as a new poll showed that she is short of crucial support from lawmakers. Rousseff's Attorney General, José Eduardo Cardoso, had asked the top court for an injunction to suspend Sunday's lower house vote. He had sought the suspension until the full court can rule on what he called procedural flaws in the impeachment process. But the court dismissed the motion 8-2 during a session that ran into the early hours. Before the decision, a new survey by a Brazilian newspaper showed for the first time that Rousseff's opponents had already secured the 342 lower house votes needed to advance impeachment. She is accused of violating federal budget laws by using loans from state-owned banks to mask the size of government's budget deficit, damaging the nation's economic credibility. Rousseff, on her part, has denied any wrongdoing. But support for her from within her governing coalition has steadily eroded. If her impeachment is approved by the required two-thirds majority of 513 House members, the Senate must then vote on whether to go ahead with putting her on trial for breaking budget laws. That could clear the way for Rousseff's suspension and replacement by Vice President Michel Temer as soon as early May, pending a trial that could last 6 months. A former leftist guerrilla, Rousseff had not been expected to resort to Supreme Court until after Sunday's vote. However, her legal advisor's request to the court was seen as a sign, even before the latest newspaper survey, that her government now expects defeat. If Rousseff is ousted, it would end the 13-year rule of a leftist Workers' Party. But the road after her does not look smooth either. If she is ousted by the Senate, Temer, who would serve out Rousseff's term until 2018, has little popular support. He would face a daunting task of restoring confidence in a country where dozens of political leaders, including his close associates, are under investigation for corruption. According to Transparency Brazil, a corruption monitoring group, 60% of 594 members of Brazil's Congress face serious charges like bribery, electoral fraud, illegal deforestation, kidnapping, and homicide. The question is, will Rousseff be judged by those who are themselves under the scanner?
While Dilma Rousseff is doing some number crunching ahead of the Sunday vote, in the US presidential race, the number crunching seems unending. If opinion polls are anything to go by, ahead of Tuesday's high-stakes New York primaries, Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Hillary Clinton are poised to win. But sparks continued to fly ahead of the big battle for the Big Apple. Hillary and Sanders aggressively challenged each other's judgment to be precedent in a Democratic debate, wrangling over Wall Street banks, the minimum wage and gun control, and Trump made heads turn once again. He said his party wants him to lose and the system is rigged against him.
The presidential hopefuls in the US are preparing for a New York showdown. Opinion polls for the next primary to be held this Tuesday show that frontrunners in the race, Democrat Hillary Clinton and Republican Donald Trump, have clear leads. After key losses in the past week, both Trump and Clinton are campaigning hard for delegates in New York. The Republican frontrunner has accused his party leaders of conspiring against him. His comments came after Ted Cruz was awarded all of Colorado's delegates without a statewide vote, a move defended by the Republican officials.
I'm hundreds of delegates ahead, but the system, folks, is rigged. It's a rigged, disgusting, dirty system. It's a dirty system. And only a non-politician would say it, because I don't care. Look, if it doesn't happen, I'm here for one reason: make America great again. That's the only reason.
More troubles came from the Republican camp for Trump when former First Lady Laura Bush dropped hints that she would prefer anyone else to become the president other than the New York billionaire. Ted Cruz was riding on his wins in Colorado, North Dakota, and Utah. Both Cruz and Ohio Governor John Kasich will look for a significant addition to the delegate count, eyeing a contested Cleveland convention in July. In the Democratic camp, Hillary Clinton, who was twice elected to represent the New York state for Senate, has a big hometown advantage.
The last few years also have laid bare deep fault lines in America. They've revealed how frayed our bonds of trust and respect have become. Despite our best efforts and our highest hopes, America's long struggle with racism is far from finished. It is up to all of us to repudiate it.
Bernie Sanders, meanwhile, is fighting hard to keep his presidential hopes alive.
We are going to invest in education and jobs for our kids, not jails and incarceration. Costs less money to send kids to college than it is to lock them up. I'd rather send them to college.
The presidential hopefuls are busy this weekend, taking part in debates addressing campaigns, defending ideologies and perspectives, all headed for a big showdown this Tuesday in the Big Apple.
While many are wondering why so few US citizens were mentioned in the Panama Papers, the revelations which rocked the world last week continued to create ripples in global political and economic spheres. Spain's industry minister stepped down on Friday after the documents connected him to offshore investments in the Bahamas. Media reports also showed links with a tax haven company in Jersey. This comes close on the heels of a police raid on the headquarters of law firm Mossack Fonseca in Panama City. Fonseca is at the center of the global tax controversy. The Panama Papers bomb has led 5 EU nations to agree on a tax crackdown. Tax and law enforcement agencies in the UK, Germany, France, Italy and Spain will now share data to prevent international tax dodging. For the African continent, the world this week was a mix of hope and gloom. A group of Nigerian schoolgirls abducted by the militant group Boko Haram exactly 2 years ago have been identified in a new video, raising hopes that they are all alive. The video, shown to 3 mothers of girls abducted 2 years ago from northeast Nigeria's Chibok, is the first possible sighting of the girls since a video of them in captivity was released in May 2014. About 15 girls are featured in the new video, pleading with the Nigerian government to cooperate with Boko Haram on their release. It has renewed global calls for efforts to find them. A severe drought has gripped southern Africa. Malawi has declared a state of national disaster and Mozambique has sounded a red alert. What's looming in this water-starved part of the world are starvation, disease and power woes. What this region desperately needs is bountiful rainfall and effective water management.
Southern Africa is on the brink of one of the worst food shortages in the region. Malawi has declared a state of emergency following a severe drought, and Mozambique has issued a red alert. Neighbors Zimbabwe, Zambia and Lesotho also have a severe food shortage issue. South Africa is also facing the worst drought in nearly a century. The World Food Programme has estimated that over 10 crore people in the region will be in need of aid this year. Malawi now remains the worst hit as the country now grapples malnutrition and severe food shortage. The country's staple, maize, saw a 12% drop in production. After flash floods and drought affected the crops, now around 1/5 of the population faces food insecurity. Children remain the most affected and millions of them are at the risk of hunger, disease and water shortages.
The major problem that we're experiencing because of this drought is malnutrition among our children. So, many of them are seriously malnourished and they lack vitamins. We spend much time at the hospital with them, and this is pathetic.
In the neighboring Zimbabwe and Zambia, the record low levels in one of Africa's biggest dams, Lake Kariba, due to long dry spells has increased the looming threat of starvation and power deficiency.
Now at the lake itself, we have got the 2 stations, the generating stations in Zambia and Zimbabwe. They are, between the 2 of them, on a daily basis, they are consuming between 900 and 1,000 cubic meters.
Lake Kariba has now fallen to 12% of its capacity as against 51% during the same time last year. The livelihoods of fishermen who depend on its waters has also been threatened.
We did not get good rains this year and the water level in the lake is very low. We are not catching as much fish as we used to in 2014 and the years gone by. It's now very difficult to survive because there are no jobs in Kariba.
The drought gripping the region has been attributed to a strong El Nino effect. Dry grounds, empty fields that by now should be filled with the feet-high crops now mark the region. Water restrictions are also enforced in several cities. Even with immediate rains, the region will take a long time to recover from this natural deprivation of water.
In Egypt, former President Hosni Mubarak has recently requested for acquittal from all charges of corruption and embezzlement in return for paying all of his dues to the state. This request has triggered a debate over whether it is right for corrupt officials or businessmen to pay for their freedom, made possible by a new law issued in January this year. Time for a breather on World Konnect. If you are a James Bond fan, stay on for news on the icon. And if you are struck by wanderlust, the ancient canals of Mexico City's Xochimilco are waiting for you.
हर दिन बदलती खबरें, हर पल बनती नई सुर्खियां, खबरों की रफ्तार के साथ हर दोपहर दुनिया की ताजा तस्वीर। दोपहर समाचार रोजाना 2 बजे सिर्फ DD न्यूज पर।
Here's what else is drawing eyeballs elsewhere. If you are a Bond fan, Paris is the place to be because that's where you'll find his original costumes, props and film clips. His world in one place at James Bond 007, the exhibition for the next 6 months. Did you say the world is not enough? A Bond fan can surely never have enough of him.
The man with the license to kill has been around for more than 50 years now. The British Secret Service spy with his well-tailored suits, technologically advanced gadgets and suave speech delivery is the ultimate action hero for many. A 6-month-long Paris exhibition showcases the unique and captivating Bond style in the longest-running film franchise of all time. With an array of original costumes, props and film clips, the James Bond 007, the exhibition, aims to recreate the movie experience.
James Bond films always follow a similar narrative structure. So James Bond always goes to visit M's office, he goes to Q branch to be armed for his missions, he usually goes to a casino, he goes off on missions to exotic locations, he battles villains, and there are often snow chases in the films. So what we decided to do was follow that narrative structure and allow visitors to follow in the footsteps of James Bond and really have that authentic experience.
The film series based on Ian Fleming's spy novels was launched in 1962 with Dr. No starring Sean Connery in the role of the 007 secret agent. And the director of the film, Terence Young, took Sean Connery to his own tailor, Anthony Sinclair, to have a slim, centered suit cut for an athletic body. This was the beginning of the costume style that would continue for decades.
You also have to respect a few rules which are making the success of 50 years of Bond. I mean, you have to remember that Bond is an English gentleman working in the service of Her Majesty. So he's wearing a suit as a job, you know, I mean, this is his job. He's dressed up like that to go to work. So he is, in the same time,
extremely elegant, like an English gentleman is expected to be. He wears perfect shoes, very well, beautifully cut suit. This is the inheritance that you have, and you have to carry that.
The Bond style has a long story to tell, the turn of a century, and patterns that change with that. Outfits, famous locations, and of course, the Aston Martins. The legacy continues.
Picture this. You are sailing down a network of green canals in a colorful open-air gondola. Welcome to Xochimilco, at the southern edge of Mexico City. Its stunning ancient canals are a historic treasure, a feast for the eyes that have mesmerized many a tourist. It's a glimpse into not just pre-Hispanic, but pre-Aztec Mexico.
The Xochimilco canals in Mexico are a popular tourist destination for Mexicans and foreigners alike. For those living in the city, a boat row in the Xochimilco canals, just over an hour from the capital, are a weekend tradition. The canals stand out with their colorful boats and picturesque waterways. They are much more than a tourist attraction. They are a piece from Aztec history, a reminder of the pre-Hispanic heritage. Xochimilco was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987. It now stands in what was believed to be the largest city in pre-Columbian America. The Aztecs had skillfully built the city on the now dried-up lake Texcoco. They came up with an ingenious design which embraced the water-filled landscape around it, along with canals and bridges connecting it to land. They also had embankments to prevent salty lake water from mixing with fresh spring water. Terracotta aqueducts also surrounded the city. The best-known feature is the chinampas, or floating gardens, which provided land for raising crops. The agricultural mounds are built by sinking cane frames into shallow lake beds. Life in this pre-Hispanic jewel is like any other. Many families live on the water nestled south of the Mexican capital, sailing to school, buying groceries, living a peaceful and mostly uneventful life.
A floating school is making a world of difference to hundreds of poor children in Nigeria's Lagos, most of whose parents fish for a living. The children who study there simply love the experience of learning on a boat in the midst of water. What's more, the school offers them free education. Had it not been for architect Kunle Adeyemi, this novel experiment would not have seen the light of day.
In the heart of Nigeria's largest city, Lagos, is a floating slum which houses thousands of people. Popularly called the Venice of Nigeria, the Mokoko slum does not share the grandeur of the Italian city. Stuck without proper shelters and with the tag of illegal residents, the dwellers of Mokoko have one thing to rejoice over: architect Kunle Adeyemi's floating school. The little children now have a chance to continue their education in a school boat with water everywhere around them.
I like it because it's present by our house, only on water, and coding the environment to learning and clapping and jumping and singing.
I like the school because I have never seen any school floating on water before. This is the only one that I've seen. That is why I forced my parents to take me to this school. I like this school.
Kunle Adeyemi, an architecture graduate from the University of Lagos, owns a firm in Amsterdam. A visit to his home city and school inspired him to start designing the Mokoko floating school in collaboration with the Mokoko waterfront community. Though the fear of demolition loomed over the project, Adeyemi went ahead and built the school. His dream to provide a solution to those suffering from poverty came true, as the Lagos state has now decided to adapt structures that fit into the urban landscape.
Demolition does not affect our development. We hope our development affects the issues surrounding the demolition, because we're also offering to the state a solution for developing a place like Mokoko and other water communities in Lagos State and in other parts of Nigeria.
Sourced from local timber, the pyramidal structure of the school blends in with the environment. Variation in water level does not affect it, and most importantly does not affect the children's learning process that was disrupted when water entered the old school. The school now not only provides free education to 100 students, the novel building structure, which is both ecologically friendly and sustainable, can inspire larger, similar designs around the African coastal region, marked with dense population.
That's learning while you float. This brings us to the end of this edition of World Konnect. Don't forget to share feedback with us on the show. You can write to us on our email ID, which is worldkonnect@gmail.com. You can also check out our Facebook page. But before we leave, we will show you how thousands of worshippers flocked to a temple in Taichung City to send the palanquin off on a 9-day journey in honor of Taiwan's popular goddess Mazu. Until we meet you again next week, it's goodbye from the entire team of World Konnect. Thanks for watching.